you know, if you were a communist dictator, like this studio would be your office. And there'd be like an enormous desk over there. And then it would be like this huge oriental carpet, a giant picture of you or some fierce bird or bear behind you, and then like 2 seats over here. And somebody would walk in, and it would be a long walk to your desk. The doors would be there, the other opposite, and they would open up, and you'd be like, oh, crap. And you just hear the click, click. It'd have to be a marble floor, so it would echo, click, 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 click. And you'd be like, hurry up! Click, 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 click.
And then you get shot when you walk in the
office.
office.
Then you get shot. Then you'd be like, and then you'd get, why is the tarp on the floor right here by your desk? But this picture of Kim Il-jung, or whatever his name is, this picture of him in his office, and I find this incredible. The Blaze is running a picture of him in his office, and he's got these enormous maps on the back wall, and they're all brand new maps of the attack flight of the missiles to wipe out Austin, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, what is it, Chicago, and another one.
Boston? Did you say Boston?
Yeah, Boston, Washington. Is New York in that one? Los Angeles, and Austin, Texas.
Yeah, I was interested that it was Austin specifically.
And there's not a lot of people in...
Is he pissed off at how weird Austin is?
I know. There's a lot of people in Texas that'd be like, okay, well, I mean, we have to lose one.
You know.
So he's got this giant map. Like, who has in their office an enormous map with the flight pattern of the missiles, and you're trying to keep that under wrap? Okay, don't tell anybody. This is a secret. Oh, did somebody take that picture of me sitting by in the desk with that giant map of how I'm going to destroy America? Well, it's a little obvious. It's like communist dictators live in this cartoon world, and somehow or another, I guess it's because the safes actually do kill when they fall out the window. Somehow or another, these cartoon characters end up starving all of their people to death.
Well, Kim Jong-un the problem is he has no control over his media. And when there's pictures taken, he can't control that they get released. Camps. No, they got released. Darn it. It's so ridiculous.
So anyway, they have this big march. And I was watching it this morning, and I thought, my gosh, look at what is happening. They're holding this huge march in this square. Does anybody notice that North Korea and the march that they're doing is basically the opening scene of the Hunger Games? It's the scene where everybody is coming into the square, and they're like, okay, I'm really happy to be here, Grand Leader. Yay, I'm for you. It really is the Hunger Games, and it's happening all over the world now. People are gathering in these big squares, and they're like, yay, please don't beat me. Let's kill the Americans. Let's kill the Americans. And somehow or another, our president, who has been, I'm going to sit down and have sandwiches with these guys. I think they might have had peanut butter sandwiches, but I don't think they've ever had a peanut butter and banana sandwich. And if they have a banana sandwich, peanut butter and banana, I mean fried, like the king used to do. They have them like, give me a banana sandwich. You have one of those sandwiches, they're going to be great. And I could have a nice talk. And I'll be able to really talk to him because his mouth will be full of peanut butter. And he'll be like, okay, I want to sit. And that's when I tell him all of the great stuff about America and how wrong they are. Our president, who has wanted to sit down and have peanut butter and banana sandwiches with every brutal dictator and thug, suddenly is talking now about, we got to send the B-52s over. We just sent B-52s, the stealth B-52 bombers, over to South Korea. Now, you tell me, why are we doing that? Why isn't he having a peanut butter and banana sandwich with them? I mean, we've already sent over some of our best basketball players. Why don't we send over our Secretary of State? You're willing to talk to them. You've been willing to put up with all of their lies and everything else. And now the little cartoon character starts to put cartoon maps on his wall about how he's going to destroy us. And we're expected to believe this now, that he's serious. And the same thing with Iran. I contend it goes back to what is happening in Cyprus. I will tell you, I am always, always, always wrong on time. So I'm sure we have more time. I will tell you, though, that lately I have been saying to Pat off the air, I think that we have less time than we would hope, but more time than we think. That sounded right, didn't it, Pat?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds right. Sounds right to me, too, which means if I'm always wrong in time, we don't have any more time left. So I'm not predicting anything on time or anything else. We are setting the stage for the global reset now. With what happened in Cyprus, and we'll get into this in a second, and now what is happening with this cartoon character, there's two cartoon characters. I mean, really, come on. They're cartoon characters. Kim Jong-un and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. They're cartoon characters. And you always know the thugs because they always look ridiculous. May I point out Joe Biden? And so they're coming up, and we're expected now to believe after 4 years of they're not a problem, they're not a problem, they're not a problem, that all of a sudden we've got to take these guys seriously, and they're really close to creating a missile that could knock all of our cities out. We've got to get our bombers over there right away. These guys were being mocked just a few months ago, and when people insisted to take them seriously, they were like, okay, well, we'll talk to them. We'll talk to them. There's no reason to get all crazy with missiles and planes and soldiers and guns and stuff. Why do we need guns and stuff? And now all of a sudden, we're sending our B-2s over. The reason for war, when you're looking at a global war, look at World War I. World War I was the resetting of the world. It changed the power. It took England, whose navy ruled the entire world. The sun never set on the British Empire. That's before World War I. Shortly after World War I, the sun was going down all over the place because they no longer had the navy that they once had just 3 years before. Why? Because as part of the peace treaty, the new power on the scene, the United States, said, you'll have to destroy your navy. We set the rules because we had the money. But just a few years before, as the Fabian socialists were trying to reset the world into one global state, the power was shifted and it was different. And so what happens after the war? The Fabian socialists before say, now's the time to reset the world. We can reset the world because the real power source, England, is faltering. And so we reset the world, but what happens? The world doesn't want to go into a global government. They say no to the League of Nations. And so the economies go and are collapsed again in the 1930s because cartoon characters start to pop up again. And so the world has to go to war against these cartoon characters. And what happens? Lines are redrawn. Alliances are all redrawn yet again. Countries change. Nobody really questions anything. How we had an alliance with the communists. We just had to do what we had to do. The communists are now in our government. They're our enemies, and yet they're our friends. Nobody questions it. And then what happens? Right after the war, they say, okay, now you're ready for the United Nations, right? And everybody is like, yeah, well, we did have all of that war and stuff. And it's probably not going to be a big deal. And so we get the United Nations. I contend World War III is to finalize the one world government. And I don't think that's a stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of people that's what all the entire financial system is talking about. One world government. But you're not going to get one world government. You're going to get a very different world because the only governments that are really on the verge of collapse are in the West. China, they'll say China is on the verge of collapse, and it might be. I don't know. How can you trust? You don't know anything that's coming out of that country. Russia is not on the verge of collapse. The third world countries, the former third world countries, Brazil, India, they're not on the verge of collapse. Those are the new Americas, if you will. And where is America? America is headed towards Mexico. Mexico is our future. A country where, you know what the number one problem is in Texas? The number one concern in Texas for security has nothing to do with terrorism and has nothing to do with the economy. The number one thing that could kill Texas is the drug lords that are on our side of the border now. The drug cartels from Mexico, because we don't have any border security. So what does that really put us into? And I contend this was done for a reason as well. You have to weaken Texas. Even the Russians knew you'll never take over the United States of America as long as you have Texas. Every single war plan that the Soviet Union had to invade the United States of America, not one of them included any troops in Texas because they knew. I contend they're weakening us, intentionally weakening us. But what does the world look like at the end of whatever is coming?